Yo, what's up? Welcome to Kinda Funny Games Daily for Monday, April 18th, 2022. I'm one of your hosts, Blessing Adeoye Jr. Joining me is Game Onesis, aka Janet Garcia.
Yo, what's good? Good to be here.
Good to have you. I love that you're wearing your PS I Love You sweater.
Yeah, I hate that it doesn't really come up that well on camera, but in person it looks really cool.
Yeah, and I don't want to call you out. You did have some of the powder on your sleeve.
I do, yeah. I was using, also let me know in the chat and on the internet what I should use for like de-oilifying my skin. I bought like the Revlon volcanic stick, but I had to clean it and I forgot to bring it back. So I was using Mario Badescu's special healing power. I know like Mario Badescu is kind of a contentious brand. Like a lot of people don't vibe with and don't fuck with Mario Badescu. I use Mario Badescu because it's what I know, it's cheap.
It's like the last Jedi of brands.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let me know in the chat. Like, is there love for Mario Badescu? I feel like also I don't know if there's any like actual reason people dislike, like a moral reason, or if it's just the products aren't good to them. But I feel like Mario Badescu is not on the streets. But that's what I used. Unfortunately, it gets everywhere, all over me. So if I'm a little like dusted and busted, that is why. But if you're listening on the audio version, I look great.
I mean, you do. Yeah, no, like you're killing it. I just want to call the powder in case you wanted to explain it, because I didn't want like somebody to be like, oh, what's that? Is like Janet doing cocaine on the side? Like, and then people would run wild with it.
I was drafting my Playdate review with chalk, as I do for all my reviews. And it's just the, the leftover remnants.
How was that? Because that, as I was checking in with you, it seems like that consumed your entire weekend. Was there Playdate review? Of course, we're live right as of 10 a.m. Embargo just went up. Playdate is going to be our main topic of conversation, but I guess this can be the preamble for it, right? Like, how was your weekend reviewing the Playdate?
The weekend wasn't that bad. Yesterday was really challenging because I put a lot of it on yesterday. Because I've been playing it throughout, obviously, like we've had it for a little while, as implied by like when our unboxings went up. And I've been playing it, but it's like sitting down to write it is a different thing. And then it's been the entire calendar year I've not done a video review for anything because they take super long. You do video essays, like you get like the collecting the assets, getting the idea to get like it's so much work to do video stuff, especially if you don't have that skill already established for yourself. So I have not done any video reviews this year because I'm just like, I can't be bothered to do all that extra work. It's like double the work on top of the written review, which is already a lot of effort. But I'm like, this time I'm going to do the video review. And I did do it. And it's up and you can watch it now. Please go watch it. Let it sit in the background. Like I worked so hard to get that out the door. But as a result, I was like I'd never have a great workflow for the video aspect because it's not my strong suit. So that was the part that really like weighed on me more. And I kind of like spaced it out a little bit more, but I wanted to like, still stream on Saturday, play Uncharted. Cause you'd be talking shit about my Uncharted playthrough. Like I was there,
You're excited
Elena
to see
showed
that.
up, spoilers for Uncharted 4.
Your bi-yearly boot up of Uncharted 4 a few days ago. When I saw the screenshot, I was like, oh shit, she's like almost halfway through the game. That's awesome.
Yeah. We're getting through it. Like I just went through, I don't know what the shorthand for it is, but this really cool like chase sequence. Yeah, it's after the clock tower.
Okay.
Like, it's like,
but it's all like,
it was fine.
It's all part of the same sequence, right? Because it goes from the clock tower into that chase.
No, it goes from.
Or is there more in there?
There's like
been a while.
There's a decent gap in between, but like it's not a crazy gap. Like it's like it's in that chapter. It is in the same chapter, which is probably why you're like connecting the two. But
that's
that
where
awesome.
That's like the open world, not open world, but like open environment exploration stuff too, right?
Yeah, it's like a little bit after like the market. Like you have like this big shootout. Like it was a good time. It was good.
Where you at? Like thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down?
I'm probably thumbs up. It's too soon to say because I'm only halfway through, but I feel like Uncharted 4 is what everyone told me 1 through 3 was. And in many ways, 4 feels like a remastered, remade version of 1 through 3 in terms of the concepts. Like I just think it's better in every way. Like it's so much more evolved, so much more polished. I like the gunplay a little bit less in this one. I don't know if I just noticed it more. Yeah, and I hesitate to say that because I'm sure it's better, but for some reason, like I came back to this one and I'm like, I don't remember the gun swaying so crazy. Like I really wish they like honed in on the weapon sway a bit. And that's a kind of a problem throughout the series. But I guess since this game is also better, you have to kind of be better because the AI is a little smarter. So maybe that's why like I notice what I feel like are the faults of the gunplay a little bit more. It's
also the first Uncharted post Last of Us. And I think Last of Us really, that was Naughty Dog being like, all right, we can lean into this. Like the shooting, because I did not like the shooting in Uncharted 1 through 3. Uncharted 4, I liked it way more, but I think that starts with Last of Us being more survival driven and being, I think, a bit more thoughtful in some of the action gameplay. And so like in Last of Us, you have that sway because you have like the scarcity of bullets and they want you to feel like, oh shit, every bullet counts. I need to survive. And so like you're missing shots and it feels tense because of that. And I felt like Uncharted 4 was capitalizing off of a lot of what made Last of Us great. And I think that weapon sway is included in there.
Yeah, and I think like in Last of Us, I actually really like the gunplay even in the first one, which is like a lot more rudimentary compared to the second one and how they evolved the gameplay there. But there it makes sense, and you don't have like a lot of shootout moments, with like a few exceptions of like kind of boss-y moments in that game, versus like Uncharted's like blockbuster film energy. So it's weird to be like, this is kind of a power fantasy, but also you're not going to hit any of your shots. And I'm like, okay, you know, like and maybe I'm just bad at it. Like that's also potentially a factor, but you know, I'm me all the time and I feel it a little bit more pertinent in this game. But like the adventuring's really cool. Like the story's way better. I'm not gonna jinx it. I'm scared for where the story's gonna go, but so far the story's way better. And I can't wait to talk to you about the ending in 2024 when I finish it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that. You know, you mentioned that your weekend was mainly like Playdate stuff. My weekend yesterday actually was day 10 of me doing Ring Fit Adventure. I've done it 10 days in a row now. I'm very happy with myself. Usually I'm very lazy with this shit. And by day 3, I'm like, nah, fuck this. I'm out. I've been enjoying Playdate a lot. And I don't want to talk too much about it because we've talked about it before. What I will say, the thing that has blown me away with Playdate, or not Playdate, sorry, Ring Fit, with Ring Fit, has been the fact that every other day, I find that a different muscle is sore in a way that I was like, I didn't know this muscle could be sore. There's like in the lower back, because I was doing this workout yesterday, right, with Ring Fit, where they make you hold the ring up and then you do like the forward bends, right? And I was leaning into those because I was doing a lot of that's like one of those yellow moves. You played Ring Fit, you know what I'm talking about, because there's like type advantages and shit. And I was facing like a lot of yellow enemies, so I needed a yellow move, and that was my yellow move that I relied on. And so I was doing that shit like over and over again, and I was like, man, this seems kind of easy. Like, am I leaning on this too much? Like, am I getting a real workout from this? This morning, when I tell you that like I dropped something, I went to pick it up, and I was like, oh, all right, no, this is working. Like, this is exactly what I need. And so that's been my weekend. My other thing is that like, man, for people who work out all the time, are you just constantly sore? Because like, goddamn, have I been sore for the last 10 days straight?
You get a little bit more used to it. I've never been big on like generalized working out a lot, because usually my thing is running. The closest to generalized I've been is when I was like training for my first half marathon and taking boxing classes at the same time. And that's like the most I had like for a balanced kind of fitness regimen. But after a while, like yes and no, like you get used to it and you like know how to live with the pain, where you still notice it, but it's not as deep. And then of course doing like foam rolling and other stuff, like at a certain point, like I didn't really mind soreness, like when I was marathon training, like recently, but injury would be like what I would notice if I had pain instead of just soreness. That would be like a different thing.
I feel that.
I never knew how like steroids worked, and I was very shocked to find out that it reduces the time that you're sore afterwards.
Really?
Yeah. So that's like your recovery.
Is this a recommendation?
No, I'm just like it was just one of those fun facts that you like discovered.
This is villain era all roided up.
Could you imagine?
He's tearing through these games. I'll tell you.
I'll tell you the same thing that
I like Nick. Show up to KFGD one day looking like Parris. You're like, oh, Parris, you look different. It's like, no, it's me. It's Blessing.
I'm just saying, like, I'll tell you the same thing I told Nick. If you need me to stick you with a needle in the butt, I will.
And with that, let's talk about today's stories, which include Playdate Reviews. They're live. A Valve writer wants to make Portal 3 and more, because this is Kinda Funny Games Daily. Each and every weekday at 10 a.m. live right here on twitch.tv/KindaFunnyGames. We run you through the nerdy news you need to know about. If you're watching live, you can correct us when we get stuff wrong by going to kindafunny.com/you're wrong. If you don't want to watch live, you can watch later on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, roosterteeth.com, or you can listen later on podcast services around the globe by searching for Kinda Funny Games Daily. Remember, you can use Epic Creator Code Kinda Funny on all Epic Store and Epic in-game purchases like Rocket League and Fortnite to help support the channel. To be a part of the show, to patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames, or bronze members or above get to write in, and silver members or above get the show ad-free with the exclusive daily post show. Housekeeping for you, KFW, aka Kinda Funny Wrestling, has a new home right here on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. Episode 1 went up yesterday in case you missed it. Episode 2 follows today, and then episode 3 records live on Twitch after KFGD today, and then will be up on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames tomorrow. So if you missed out on KFW, you can catch up right here. And then speaking of Kinda Funny Games, a new Kinda Funny Xcast is up right now on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. That is Mike and Parris. They're joined by Chris Charla, the director of ID at Xbox. They have a good conversation breaking down ID at Xbox. You can catch that right now, youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames, and on podcast services around the globe. And then if you're wondering where our Thor Love and Thunder reactions are, they're recording that right now as we speak. And that'll, of course, go up later on youtube.com/kindafunny. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Fargo Brady, Pranksy, and Anonymous. Today we're brought to you by Credit Karma, but we'll tell you about that later. For now, let's begin with what is, and forever will be, the Roper Report. It's time for some news. We have 8 stories today.
A baker's dozen.
Starting with our number 1. As the show went live, so did Playdate Reviews. Janet, I want to talk to you all about it. That's actually why you're on today. You were going to be on Wednesday. I had to switch things around because you've been playing the Playdate. You reviewed the Playdate. Your review Playdate is up over on Pen to Pixels. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, and I want to talk to you about that in a second. I also have reviewed the Playdate. There's a TikTok up right now, and we'll show that in a few. But first, I want to start with a roundup. Let's start with Seth Macy at IGN, who gave it an 8 out of 10 and says this: the Playdate is for a very specific, very specialized audience, of which I was surprised to find myself a member. I was unable to resist the pure lo-fi charm of it. And while the season 1 games don't all hit for me, the joy of trying out a steady flow of new, interesting, inventive games held my interest even for the ones I wasn't too keen on. The crank is a gimmick for sure, but the way certain game designers cleverly implemented it is really fun, and I'm interested to see what uses come of it in future games. That being said, ergonomically, it's definitely a bummer to use for some of the more crank-intensive games, and the screen's lack of backlight can be a frustrating limitation. But you know what? The Playdate charmed me, and now I am fully under its spell. And then Chris Scullion at Video Games Chronicle gave it a 3 out of 5 and says, ultimately, it feels like the system will live or die by how well its community supports it with further sideloaded games. The 24 titles included as part of its season 1 are entertaining enough, but as with any collection of video games, you'll get hits and misses. And combined, they may not quite justify the $180 cost of the unit. In an ideal world, the Playdate will gain plenty of support from indie developers and will eventually build up a nice little library of quirky and experimental games to download and sideload. But time will tell whether this actually plays out in the long run. Janet, before I say any more, for people who are out of the loop, who haven't heard of the Playdate, what is the Playdate?
The Playdate is a new handheld console that we have right here. I forget that we can show it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, boom, the Playdate. It's a handheld console with a crank. That's sort of its big selling point and kind of gimmick, and first thing that is kind of noticed when you see the marketing for this thing. It's made by Panic in collaboration with Teenage Engineering. And the entire idea is that you get 24 games with this that you can download. But the kind of catch, or the special element, is that it's through a weekly rollout. So season 1 has 24 games. You get 2 games a week, every week for 12 weeks. And of course, when you first get it, you have those 2 games already there. And that's kind of in its entirety. There's a couple other interesting elements, again, some of the reviews mention the ability to side load or sidecar, load games onto it. So you can people can make and sell additional games for it, and for the community, you can make your own games to put on it, and even with it filled up with other games, there's space to add additional ones. So it's kind of the extra layer, as well as things the mirroring functionality that it has with the app, where you can stream it or play it using sometimes keyboard and controller support depending on the kind of game. Also can help with a few elements of the accessibility in terms of not being able to see the screen as well, wanting a bigger screen for the device. And yeah, that's kind of the elevator pitch of the Playdate.
Kevin, if you can you prep I put in a link to the Twitter video of our TikTok. If you can prep that while I ask Janet. Janet, you reviewed the Playdate.
Yes.
What did you give it?
I gave it a 3 out of 5 after much soul searching.
And that is on the Pen to Pixel scale.
Yes, which for me, that's good. So my scale, if I'm getting my own scale correct, is 1 is bad, 2 is okay, 3 is good, 4 is great, and 5 is amazing. Or incredible. I should know that a little bit better. But yeah, and I went back and forth on it a lot because I really was debating between okay and good, specifically because of the ergonomics of it, which I know you and I have talked about a bit just as we were reviewing it, because it can be really rough for certain games, but other games it really doesn't matter very much, which is why ultimately I'm okay, I think there's enough really cool stuff here, stuff that works, stuff that's interesting, and none of the ergonomics ever provide a complete barrier to me enjoying any of the games. They just might be ones that don't feel as great as others. And then of course, everyone else, I also was wish there was a backlight. Now, I know some people in the chat were like, what the heck does that have a backlight? Like, how's that possible? I will say it's not as devastating as it sounds because it has like a really reflective screen. Like, it is way better than like what you get off like your Game Boy Color. Like, way better. However, just like the Game Boy Color, you cannot use it like in the dark. And if you hold it at certain angles, even in a completely lit room, just like anything that isn't backlit, it will be, you know, kind of obstructed in that way. So it almost gets away with it, but I'm like, I still feel like I want the backlight even indoors.
That's the thing is, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of it almost gets away with it. Where I first started using it, I saw the screen, and the screen is really nice. And when you are in an area that's well lit, or you have the lighting right, it looks amazing. I think the screen and the games on the screen look immaculate. But then I'll have cases where, you know, for a thing like this, right, for a handheld, I like to like play in bed before I go to sleep, right? Like I'll sit back, you know, hang out, and like with that, I can't play with the lights off. And then also, even when my lights on, because of the positioning of the light in my room, right? The light's in the middle. If I'm sitting with my back toward the wall with my Playdate, I can't see shit. Like, and that is with the lights on. And for me, that was a big hindrance during my time with it. Kevin, you can go ahead and play. This is our TikTok that we uploaded of my review. Playdate is a pretty okay piece of hardware. Though if you're someone who's excited about the concept, don't let that score deter you. There's a lot to enjoy in this little Game Boy with the crank. Firstly, the design is bright, joyful, and tiny, a lot like the games we'll be getting on this thing. Tiny doesn't mean flimsy though. It's toy-like as it presents. It's also nice and sturdy. The crank works as advertised, though so far the games in Season 1 haven't offered much that blow me away with its use. In fact, the games that I enjoyed the most are games like Demon Quest 85 and Inventory Hero, which don't actually make much use of the crank. Most of the games are great. They remind me of classic Game Boy games with a touch better fidelity and modern design sensibilities. You'll get arcade stuff, visual novels, and everything in between. The library of Season 1 games is varied, and I'm always delighted to see what unique title is going to pop up on any given day. However, the lack of backlight is the big downside. It's really only playable in very well lit spaces. It also never feels completely natural to switch from buttons to crank. Battery life in standby mode lasts for about a week, which isn't that great either. Knowing that going in, if you're sold on it already, I'd say it's worth getting, because I think Playdate is a pretty okay piece of hardware. And there you have it, of course, the patented Roger Picorni loop. But yeah, one thing to note also with the battery life and standby mode, both of us were playing during the review period, in which the standard cadence for new games dropping on the Playdate, it's 2 games every week, right? With a total of 24 games, that'll make up 12 weeks. For our Playdate experience, we had 2 games every single day, which meant that our Playdate was downloading new games every single day, which I'm sure had a hindrance on the battery life. So I want to put that out there as a disclaimer. But I think we share a lot of the same thoughts, right? Like, again, I gave it a 3 out of 5, which on the Kinda Funny scale is also an okay. But I think the way I put it is, if you're somebody who looks at the Playdate, goes, damn, that looks really cool, I really like the idea, I really want to experience that, then I'd say go for it, especially if you're down to put down the $180, right? I think that for me was also a big, like, $180 seems like a lot for this thing that doesn't have a backlight, that you don't know like how certain the future is, right? I think the idea is very novel and very cool, and the games I played on this thing have been good for the most part, right? Like I mentioned Demon Quest 85 in my review, and like I've had a blast with that thing, right? It's a visual novel where you are going to like you're trying to summon all these different demons from like a demon book, and you're like looking through your yearbook of classmates and like trying to figure out like, okay, what combination of classmates, item to gift the demon, and then music to play do I need to summon the different demons? And it's like a cool puzzle game, like puzzle visual novel essentially. And I had a blast with it, and that didn't require the crank. And I think that's one of my other complaints, is the fact that like the crank is cool, but it definitely feels like a gimmick. None of the games I played have like blown me away with the crank's use.
It is one of those things where like, maybe there's a reason no one else put a crank on this. I still fuck with the crank, but I kind of get it. And then on the brighter side, I do like that when it doesn't use the crank, it makes it easier for like the accessibility stuff that you can do when you like queue it up to a PC. That's kind of like on the side in the sense that requires an additional piece of hardware. So like I didn't talk a lot about that in my review because that's sort of separate from the individual device you're buying. I have like a bunch more to say on this, but I'm curious to know, Blessing, before you got this, like what were your expectations going in? And then did this meet, exceed, or was this beneath your expectations?
I was looking for something fun, right? Like I liked it for the idea that it was novel, and I liked it for the idea that video game developers, right, indie developers are going to come to this thing and make whatever their idea is with it, and have it be this thing of the games that I'm playing on the Playdate are games that I'm not going to get anywhere else, right? That was the thing that excited me, especially for like a development experiment. It reminds me of Janet, what do they call them, like a bunch of devs, like
Game jams?
game jam. Yeah, it reminded me of like a game jam situation of, hey, here's a unique piece of hardware, now make a game for it that could use the crank, could use the small screen, like make a game specifically for this device. And I thought that sounded exciting. And I'll say that I think for the most part, this meets my expectations. Like again, like the backlight for me is a bummer. And I would have hoped that like, they said before that I wasn't gonna have a backlight. I didn't know how that was gonna hit until I had it. And now that I have it, I know that like, yeah, I would prefer this thing to have a backlight. I think that's a big thing. And then ergonomically, I think that was the other thing for me where I'm like, cool, how's this thing gonna hold? Is it gonna be comfortable to use the crank? And it's not the worst thing, again, like with games like Demon Quest where I'm not even using the crank, it's totally fine. Like, it definitely is a brick, right? And I'm definitely holding it like it is like a very cube like Game Boy, right? Or whatever shape you call this. I know it's not a cube because all the sides aren't equal, but you know what I mean, right? Like it's very brick like.
It's something.
It's something. And it's not the best ergonomically.
After like an hour, does your hand cramp up?
Cramp up is extreme. But I do, but I feel pain like all the time, like playing a bunch of games. Like I am not without pain. Yeah, like I'm not without pain gaming in general. For me, it's more of like, do I feel like I have a good control of the device? Not just like, does it feel good? Because it's part of it is a little bit of like the claw element of like, you know, and people that are like looking at the video version can kind of see that I sort of cradle it between like my pinky and my index finger. And then I use like the other ones as like a back support. The big issue with, I think with the ergonomics for me that I really delve into like in my review is when you're using the crank, and especially if you have to spin it quickly, which a few games do require you to spin it quickly, not too many. That's really more of like a time travel adventure kind of thing. You start you're pushing into the system, but you're also like, you have to then pull against it to counterweight it because you're still looking at the screen, which was what it was interesting about like queuing up to the PC to do the mirror thing. It felt actually a little bit more comfortable because I'm not also having like, it kind of just demands 100%. A lot of the player a little bit. And that's, again, the biggest knock on it. For me, I'm similar to you, Bless. Like I went in, I want some cool experiences and some, you know, intriguing use of the crank. And overall, I feel like I got that. I do think that it's going to be really interesting when this comes out, how people are going to receive their first few games. Because for me, like, and I texted you about this, I hit up those first two games and I'm like, I don't like this. I didn't like the games. I didn't like the feel. Like, I just had nothing but kind of negatives to say.
First two games, I think, are, and Jan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like, is the audience going to get the games in the same order we did?
I actually am not sure because I looked at one of the press or like FAQs, and it did say something that kind of implied that maybe they'd be distributed maybe randomly. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not confident that
there's answers out there, even though this is a very unique questions for us because like we played before and not many people are going to be able to do that, right? Like, I don't know the order people are going to get the games in. If they get them in the same order that we did, yeah, like those first two games, the first one was like fun for literally like 15 minutes. I don't see myself because that was the surfboard
white
game.
Water. Oh my god, I said it a bunch today. White Water Wipeout.
Whitewater, is that what it's
made
called?
By Chew Labs, yes. Whitewater.
Yeah, Whitewater Wipeout.
God, Whitewater Wipeout, made by Chew Labs. Yes.
Cool idea and fun concept, and I think they executed it. But it's also like it's an arcade game, right? It is you doing like a score attack thing where you're trying to surf on waves, and it is you using the crank and trying to control the surfer with the crank. And like it was fun for like 15 minutes, but then like I then hopped into the second game, and the second game was initially really cool, right? Like the second game that I played was Casual Birder, which is this like it's a game where you walk around, almost remind me a little bit of Earthbound in the way that you walk around the overworld, but then like instead of like getting into like JRPG fights or whatever, you're taking pictures of birds, right? Like you have tools in your inventory where you can bust out your camera and then try to focus in and use the crank to like adjust your focus, and you can take pictures of birds. I like that for like 30 minutes, but then I was like, all right, I'm done with this. This isn't my kind of game. Like, I'm sure a Greg Miller or somebody else would be more into this if you're into photography and video games. But then I did end up getting games later, like Omaze, which is like
I love Omaze too.
Puzzle game. Yeah, Omaze was the shit.
Omaze
right?
is really good. Like I was blown away by how good. Like Omaze was when I feel like it was really hitting its stride for me in the rollout of games. Where like after the first two, and I texted you and I'm like, man, I am not into this. Like, oh, well, and I felt like kind of salty about it. Then right after that, I think it was Boogie Loops and, oh, shoot, what was the second game? Oh, Time Travel Adventures, which it's so funny because Time Travel Adventures is such a simplistic game. Like, you're moving the crank and a little, like, kind of wind-up man is slowly moving his limbs. And you're just trying to avoid, like, the obstacles until you get to the end where you, like, the story stick is, oh, you're running late for a date, like, every day. And that's kind of funny, like, just inherently. But the way it utilized the crank and sort of had like a puzzle element to it and had like a quick reaction element to it, like I was in love with that game. Like that's still one of my favorites, even though it's not necessarily like the most mind-blowing piece of technology, but I found so much like intrigue and joy and challenge in that. And then Boogie Loops I just loved because you could make bears shake their ass, and I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, like Boogie Loops is basically, it's like a little music creation tool where they also have Paint. Yeah, it's like Mario Paint. Yeah, that's a good example. And like they have visualizers and shit that you can fuck around with, and it's like a good time, right? There's like OMG's in chat mentioned, or no, it wasn't OMG. Somebody in chat mentioned like, all right, so like all OMG's said, all these games, but only one game is good. No, like plenty of games are good. Like I think most of the games are good to great, and I've had good times with the games. But I think it's the thing of it's back to that game jam conversation of the ideas that people are throwing at this thing are so different, and so like, not every game is going to be for everyone. And so for me, the first two games, I was like, okay, these seem cool. Not for me. But then I got Boogie Loops and I was like, I'm gonna fuck around with this for a little bit. And then I got, Crankin's Time Travel Adventures. And like, yeah, I thought that game was really cool and really dope and a pretty good utilization of the crank, right? And then later on, like I got Omaze and I got Inventory Hero and I got other games where I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. But I think what is going to make or break this thing is the future support, right? I believe they're going to do more seasons. At least that's planned. They're going to have like other people make games for it. Like the developer of Return of the Obra Dinn is working on a game for it that isn't part of season 1. That's going to drop as a separate thing that I assume that you can buy for however many dollars. I think that's going to be what defines the future of this thing. And like, I'm curious. Like, I think the start of it is a solid good. I would like to see them make more models that are different colors that maybe do get a backlight, right? Like that would be my big request for it. But I think as of now, it's cool. It's okay. It's a bit expensive. And like if that price scares you away, I think that's totally understandable because the price is high for what this thing is. That's what I'd say.
So like a couple things, like I know people in the chat are asking for like more of like the games that we've liked. So we should definitely like highlight some of those before we move on of just like what we think were really cool and special and interesting experiences we had with the console. Before we dig into that, as far as the price and like who it's for and all that, I've got so many questions on like, is it worth it? Like, why should I care? Like this, that, and the other. Like, do you think you'll play it for longer, or is it just going to sit in your drawer? And like, it's so interesting. Like, I get why people are asking those questions, but at the end of the day, I'm like, this is for, art nerds.
It's for the nerds.
Like art kids.
Yes.
Like people that, stand Apple Arcade. If you go 100%. On the eShop, if you're on the Nintendo eShop searching low to high on a Saturday night and just downloading what happens, and if you hate it, you just delete it and you move on. Like if you're that kind of player, if you like seeing the stuff you get in the itch.io bundles, like if you hear this concept of, hey, there's this weird, interesting device. It has 24 games from like, different developers. They all have something interesting and kind of amusing to say. Again, even the games I didn't like it's for the kids playing the indie ass. It's for the Janet Garcias of the world. Like, I could see this this is gonna sound like kind of a backhanded compliment, but I could see this just at an Urban Outfitters, let someone just impulse buys because
1000%.
It's this weird and cool mix of modern and retro because it has like, things that do feel dated, like the black and white look to it, but it also has things that feel super modern, like seasonal rollouts of games. Like that's and then it also, I think, has so many cool stuff on the side where like there's clearly such a passion from Panic and Teenage Engineering. Obviously I don't know how involved one or the other is on the entire conception and rollout of like these different elements, but like the fact that they thought about doing the mirror thing, the fact that you can stream it, that you can like, I just feel like there's so much thought and value that goes into it. That's ultimately why I did land on good, because I feel like it offers so many in a 3 out of 5 because it offers so many different things. Overall, like I had fun with it. Like I came here to have fun. Like personally, I don't need it to be, I don't need 50 hours or 5 hours of fun. If I had 50, like even with the Whitewater game, the surfing game, which admittedly I'm not a big fan of because of the ergonomics. For me, I'm like, you know what? Quick arcade hit, 15 minutes, like that's fine. Like I signed up for quick hits, some stuff that I might delve into. Like it's a grab bag, it's a mix. Like when you buy a variety pack of candy, we all know there's only like 2 or 3 things you want, but like you're still buying it because it's Halloween and we're here to have a good time. You know, put your hand in the bowl, see what you get, put some stuff back, take what you want, leave what you don't. Like that's what I feel like the energy of the Playdate is, and like
and
that's not going to be for everybody.
I think they very well know that. Like the Playdate, when they announced it, as they've been marketing it, I don't think they've been marketing or thinking about it as something that everybody's going to want to get the Playdate. They know who they're aiming at. They know they're aiming at Janet. They know they're aiming at me. They know they're aiming at like the people that like want that throwback like Game Boy experience that made like handhelds. Like I was talking to my friend Belinda Garcia, a friend of the show, right? And she was like, "Oh, dude, I fucking love handhelds. Like, tell me how it is. Like, I want to get this thing, right?" And like, she's the type of person who I know like she likes indie games. She likes like the weird shit, right? Like, she's gonna like this. And you mentioned that like, yeah, they have the retro, they have stuff that feels more modern. And I think for me, the big example of that is like, there's a game on here that's literally Snake. Like your Nokia phone.
Way too excited to play it, and like that's the kind of, again, because this is for people like me who are like, oh shit, it's Snake. And as soon as I started, I was like, this is Snake. I'm like, it's just Snake. But that's all it needs to be.
But also,
like, that's all I needed it to be.
It's Snake with a twist, right? Like, and that's the thing is like, for me, I saw that and I was like, oh, they got Snake on here. I guess I'll play it. I started playing it. I was like, oh, okay, it's Snake, but like there are a couple things different, and I can see myself playing this for a little bit. Like it's taking me back to playing Snake back on my Nokia phone. And then also on the opposite hand, it has Inventory Hero, which is literally
Inventory Hero is dope. It's like Loop Hero, but with inventory. And also, it reminds me a lot of, oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind because I don't have my Switch by me. Which is not like, it sounds unrelated, but it's a game. They showed it at like a Nintendo Indie Showcase. It has like claymation art style for part of it, but it's like this weird RPG. It's about like a brother and a younger brother. If anyone knows the name of the game I'm talking about, please let me know. It's called like Takashi something, or I don't know. I can't remember the name of it, but it's also, I think, on Apple Arcade. But it reminded me of that, like things that have funky twists on like RPG turn-based stuff where you like play something different. One thing too, like I want to mention, because like I've seen this a bit in chat, and I think we always see this online because I get it, like people like care about the price point, and obviously like we're all buying things all the time, and also deciding what not to buy. Like people are like, oh well, 180, that sounds like a lot for just like a couple fun times. If that's how you feel, then you shouldn't buy it. Like, and that's not in a like, well, you know, get out kind of way, but if genuinely, if you need it to be, you know, oh, I want like must plays on here, I want this to be like a really like perfect experience, it's not. Like it's just straight, oh, it's Takashi and Hiroshi. Thank you, Disco Bucky in chat. But yeah, like if that's what you need, like I have bad news. Like it's not for you, and that can be okay. Like I'm someone that freaking spent what $50 on that stupid Game and Watch thing because I like Mario and I just wanted it. Like there's not really logic there.
Yeah. I mean, and like I mean, sales wise, right? Like if I remember correctly, the Playdate is like it's not available right now because like I think they have
pre-orders only.
Out. Yeah, pre-orders only, and like I think they have like run like inventory, or like they've like ran out of inventory, right? Like they're killing it, right? Like they know what they've sold, they know who they're selling to, they know how many of these things they need to make, and like it's going to be for their audience. The other thing I'll say too is that I think part of why you're buying into it is the experience of the 12 weeks and getting those 2 games week to week. That's something that I wish I got while playing this while playing the Playdate, is like, because for us it was daily, right? And it was 2 games a day. You know, I got a weekend and I have like a bunch of games, and I'm like, cool, I'm not gonna have time to play all this shit, right? Like I can't play 24 games in a review period, but I'm gonna hang out with this thing, I'm gonna take my time, and I'm gonna enjoy this, right? I think for the people that are into the idea of it, those 2 games week to week is gonna be a fun time, especially if you have friends that have a Playdate, or if you have like an online community or forum where you go to and you're like, hey, like, did you get this week's 2 games? Oh man, I loved it, right? And like we should probably talk about games because we got to get into the next news story soon because we've been talking for a while, but like, for me, like, the game that I got that had me super hyped was Executive Golf, because I like me a golf game, right? Like I'm down to play anything that has golf in the title. And I got Executive Golf, and Executive Golf, what it is, right, is like a 2D golf game where you are trying to make your way up an office building. And so like you're doing golf game mechanics, right? Where you are aiming the ball, you're doing the meter, you're doing the 2 clicks for power and accuracy, and you're trying to like get up floor by floor, and you're just seeing how high you can go, and you're getting to the next levels. Like for me, that was such a fun time waster. And such a fun time. That, like we mentioned, O-Maze is such a cool puzzle / maze game that I had a good time with. That's one of the ones where I have the complaint of like you have to go back and forth between the A and B button and the crank, and that
It's
was
a little bit
annoying as
like
hell.
playing a Bop It, but like that's way better constructed. It makes
Yeah.
more sense than a Bop It, but it has Bop It energy.
And then Inventory Hero, once again, right? It being like a loop hero type game, except it is with inventory, and your character is just like on autopilot, getting into battles, and you are just like equipping things, equipping like his torso armor, equipping his pants, equipping his weapon, and like getting bad loot out of your inventory, right? You're just managing the inventory. I thought that was such a clever idea for a game, and I thought the execution was really fun and really cool. What about you? Like, what are some of your favorite games?
Yeah, stuff that we didn't talk about. I really liked Up in Smoke because I'm a platformer stan. I'll play pretty much any platformer. This one does also remind me of Shovel Knight because quite literally you do the thing where you like shovel double jump, which is quite funny. And you're like rescuing like kids that are like in the forest, but then, you know, if you don't move fast enough, they might not make it to the end of the level, but you're like collecting that and puzzle pieces and stuff. And I just think it's nicely constructed, and they have some fun using of the crank for like winding up like a well to like bring the bucket back up. Spell Corked is cool. That's one I want to dig into more. You're sort of learning, getting to know like different ingredients, and like you use the crank to sort of mix the ingredients together or chop them together, and you're slowly figuring out, okay, what does this do? Like, how do I make like a strong brew versus a weak brew? And you're like checking your reviews online. And then Star Sled. They have a couple sort of like spacey quick hit things. But Star Sled I really liked because it's really focused in that you basically just have the control for the crank. There was like a little dash with like B, at least early on. And you're basically like floating around these stars and kind of like lassoing them, and that's essentially the mechanic, and it just sort of evolves from there. And there's also an interesting mix too, just in this console, of games that have like, it's like so interesting seeing the different approaches from like all these different developers, where there are some games where they don't tell you anything at all, and there's some games where they'll tell you like kind of everything, and then some games where you can like kind of click into the digital manual of it all. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride, and I'm curious to see like how, you know, support may or may not continue, like in the community or from Panic specifically. But yeah, like I had a good time getting to know it and kind of weighing the pros and cons. And again, you know, you don't have to necessarily agree with me and Blessing or like want to get the console based on what me and Blessing say, but hopefully like me, Bless, all the other reviewers out there, y'all can get that information. And if you haven't already made a decision on the device, you know, you can make a decision from that, or make it meaningful to you, or get excited, or temper your expectations, or just whatever our words mean for you and your playtime. But yeah, we'll see y'all out there when the Playdate comes through, because I think they are probably like, you know, it's around the corner at this point with the, you know, reviews being up and everything.
I think they announced kindafunny.com/you're on. You can let us know, because all the info went live as we went live, so I didn't have time to actually check. But I think they might have announced like when
I
stuff
think
is
so
gonna
too,
start
but I got
shipping.
scared that it was. I was like, "Is this embargoed still?" So I was like, you know,
Well,
like they may be soon.
You know what we'll do, Janet? I want to tell people about patreon.com/kindafunnygames, where they can get the show ad free. While during the ad, I'll make sure to look up, and then we can talk about it. But speaking of ads, let us tell you about our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Credit Karma. Are you earning credit card rewards? Credit Karma can help you compare your reward options so you can find a card that fits your lifestyle, helping you earn miles or cash back for spending you're gonna do anyway. I've been using Credit Karma for years. It's such an easy way to just keep track of my credit score and make sure that everything is going fantastically with so many great features. Credit Karma uses your credit profile to show you offers that are tailored to your financial situation. Credit Karma partners with a wide range of card issuers, so you can be sure that you're exploring all sorts of options. Comparing cards on Credit Karma is 100% free, and it won't affect your credit score. And best of all, Credit Karma uses your credit data to show you your chances of approval before you even apply, helping you apply with more confidence. That is an awesome feature. Credit Karma, create your own karma. Ready to find the card for you? Head to Credit Karma and check out your personalized mix of offers today. Go to creditkarma.com or the Credit Karma app to find the card for you. That's Credit Karma.
A couple tidbits for you, Janet. First of all, I didn't get the name. Somebody in chat was like, "Oh, it must be a slow news day." No, we got 8 news stories. Me and Janet just don't fucking shut up, and so that's first and foremost. Secondly, I went and checked Playdates. Group 1 had begun shipping today. And so if you're in Group 1 for the Playdate, you'll get yours soon. And then the other thing is that earlier in the show, I mentioned that like they had like ran out of Playdates. You can go to their store right now and they have stock up there. You won't get it until 2023, it seems like. Yeah. They say here that we filled our production capacity for 2022, but we're ramping to make up more systems. The queue for 2023 is quickly growing, so pre-order now. And so if you're trying to get a Playdate, you can try and get one now and then get it by next year. Boom. There you go. Janet, let's hop in to story number 2. Portal's co-writer wants to make Portal 3. This is Adam Bankhurst at IGN. The co-writer of the Portal games has said he wants Valve to start work on a third game in the series. Speaking on the Kiwi Talks podcast, Eric Wolpaw, who co-wrote Portal and Portal 2, as well as such titles as Psychonauts, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2, Left 4 Dead, and Half-Life Alyx, ended the show by stating, quote, "We've got to start Portal 3. That's my message to whoever," end quote. He added, quote, "I'm not getting any younger. We're reaching the point where it's crazy to think that we're literally going to be too old to work on Portal 3, so we should just do it," end quote. However, Wolpaw also theorized earlier in the podcast that it may not be easy to get a new Portal game off the ground, despite his history writing for Valve. When asked if he'd like to make a third game, he replied, quote, "Oh yeah, I would love to. I'd work on another Portal in a second, but I can't make it happen by myself," end quote. After it was pointed out that he must have some leverage at Valve, Wolpaw replied, quote, "Oh, I could advocate for it. It might help a little bit, but the problem is that Valve has 300 employees, and I don't know exactly what the breakdown is, how many of them are on production side versus Steam business side versus legal versus whatever. So there's a lot of opportunity cost to taking 75 people and trying to get a game made. As much as it seems like Valve often is a bunch of people sitting around sipping on gin and tonics by a pool, everybody's working. They're working all the time. It's just you don't always see the result. It doesn't always end up coming out, or it comes out years later, it gets turned into something else. So everybody is accounted for, I guess is what I'm saying. People are all doing something. So you'd almost have to take them, it's like a revolution, and stir up a bunch of people to leave what they're currently working on and come work on something else. In this case, it would be Portal 3, end quote. The host then suggested that Portal 3 would nevertheless be profitable for Valve, to which Wolpaw agreed, quote, "Hey, you're preaching to the choir here. You'd make some money. The problem is you would make money, but what kind of money will you make? Are you going to make Counter-Strike Go money? Probably not. But having said that, maybe every game doesn't need to make Counter-Strike Go money, you know, Gabe, if you're listening," end quote. Janet, what are your thoughts? Like, do you want Portal 3? Do you think we could ever get Portal 3?
Yes, I want Portal 3. Yes, I think we could get it. Other thoughts are, I'm glad someone else makes the very tired joke of like, I know you're listening, because I do that all the time on our shows. And also shout out to gin and tonics, because that's probably my favorite cocktail. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what's said here makes sense, right? Where there can be desire, but that doesn't always mean that's going to amount to like a full-on project, or that it should amount to a project. Like plenty of games start and stop before we ever even hear of them. And yeah, I think it's also good to point out that everyone's always working all the time. Like even when you don't see content or games or what have you, whatever the product is, like people are busy doing other things, and you only have so many resources. Ultimately, it wouldn't break my heart if there was not any more like to the Portal franchise, but the fact that like 2 was better than 1 and 1 was a masterpiece blows my mind. And I feel like it's kind of too perfect, you know, like it's so hard to imagine like,
how do you follow up?
Yes, I joke that Portal 2 is an 11 because Portal 1 is a 10 and Portal 2 is better than Portal 1. So like the idea of this being a 12, it's hard to fathom, but I would, happily play if they made it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you that I would absolutely adore Portal 3. I obviously I can't hope for it, right? I think everything that that he mentions here, right, in the interview is pretty spot on in terms of like Valve has other things that they're doing, right? Asking Valve to make another Portal is like asking Rihanna to drop another album. It's like, bro, she's making Fenty and she's getting all this money. Album. Right? Like, and I do want another Rihanna album. And Rihanna, like, are you listening? Like, drop the album. But also, like, Valve, for them, I think when they're thinking in terms of games to make, it always has to be coupled with how is this forwarding our other pursuits. And so when we got Half-Life Alyx, that was to sell people on VR, right? That was, hey, we need a killer app. We need something that's going to be fantastic for VR to bring people in, to like get to make VR experiences something that's worth having. And so that's how and why we get Half-Life Alyx, right? Like, and there was an interview where they were talking about, yeah, we were thinking about a Portal, but part of Portal is getting flung around via gravity, right? And like jumping into portals and all this stuff. that would make you so dizzy in VR. And so that's how we settled on Half-Life, is like Portal wasn't going to work with that. For Valve to make another Portal, there would have to be something that would be coupled with it. It would have to be the killer app or something. There would have to be some kind of reason. I don't think they're in a place where they're like, yo, let's make Portal out of the goodness of their own hearts, because Valve makes so much money off of Steam and other stuff. And also that is a big undertaking, right? Like he mentions, like, look how many people work at Valve. Think about how many people it would take to make another Portal game. That is a percentage of the company that it would take to make another Portal game. It is not worth it for Valve to make another Portal game, even though I would love it, even though it would be profitable, even though, like, you know, the world would go crazy for it. But hey, like, who knows? I'm hoping that, like, what I'm hoping for is that there is whatever the VR or whatever, like, the thing they need to couple it with to actually make it happen, right? Whether it is a new Steam box or like whatever the fuck, whatever you need to make it a killer app for, green light it, make it so I can play Portal 3. That's where I'm at. But yeah, I like the idea that the writer here is like, yo, dude, I'm down to do it. That at the very least makes me excited, because that means that, like, ideas have floated for what Portal 3 can be, right? Like, he's thought about it. Like, he wants to make it. That means he's, like, considered, like, how do we follow up on Portal 2? He's thought about it. And so that at the very least makes you go, all right, oh shit, all right, we could creatively get something that could follow up, that could be cool, that could be different. Final question on this topic though, like, what would you want from Portal 3? Would you want it to be like the same story? Would you want it to be new characters?
I'd want to at least have, like, well, I'm trying to think of, like, where Portal 2 ended off and how they could even continue it necessarily. I'd want some trappings to be the same. I don't know if I necessarily need all the same characters. But what I really want is, like, whatever that new gimmick would be in terms of, like, gameplay. Because, like, the big thing was like, the gel, right? And 2? Mm-hmm. Like, what is 3's gel? It kind of goes back to, like, you know, a conversation we were having on PS I Love You about, like, what would the PS6 have to have? Like, what would be the selling point? And I'm like, it's some cool thing that I don't know about yet, that I don't know that I want. And that's kind of what I'd want to see out of Portal 3, some interesting mechanic to kind of drive it home. Because the story's great, but, like, the gameplay is also, like, a game, you know, you mentioned game with 10 out of 10 gameplay, game with 10 out of 10 story, Portal.
Yeah, 1000%. Yeah, and I, like, for me, it's tough because I can't imagine a Portal game without GLaDOS. Like, GLaDOS is such an integral part of Portal. And like, if you're gonna make another Portal game, right? Like, and I guess you could still follow up with GLaDOS, like with how Portal 2 ended, right? Like, I don't think that's necessarily impossible. So, like, I think that I'd want her to be in there at the very least. Somebody in chat mentioned, it was Oddlanders in chat mentioned, only place to go is open world Portal, LOL. And I'm sure they're joking.
Portal meets The Witness or something.
But yes, that is exactly where I'm going. Like, what if it was, hey, we're dropping you into an open facility and you can, like, go whatever direction.
100 potatoes fall
like
from the sky.
Like,
only one for me.
Honestly, I think there's cool shit you can do with that. And, like, especially with, like, the portals, of course, are, like, they're a mechanic used to solve puzzles mainly, right? Like, you use them to get around when you need to get to, like, the next puzzle or whatever. But imagine, like, it being a thing of, cool, now we're putting it in an open area, open space. Portals, of course, are, like, your main way of solving puzzles, but you now have to figure out how to get to the other side of the map, or, like, how to get to certain areas of the map using your portals. Like, that is part of the puzzles. And now we have a whole area where the area is a puzzle itself, kind of like how The Witness is. I think there's an idea there. I think that could be dope. I also think that'll be a lot of work, and also, like, to combine that with story. That's a whole thing, but it is what it is. Janet, let's hop into story number 3. Ghost of Tsushima appears to have received its final planned patch. This is Adam Bankhurst at IGN. After nearly 2 years, Sucker Punch has released what appears to be the final planned patch for Ghost of Tsushima, and has said it is not, quote, actively working on any additional patches at the moment, end quote. As reported by PlayStation Lifestyle, Sucker Punch shared the news on the notes for patch 2.18 of Ghost of Tsushima, indirectly teasing that they are full steam ahead on what is undoubtedly its next unannounced project. Quote, while we aren't actively working on any additional patches at the moment, we will continue to monitor feedback on the community-run Ghost of Tsushima Legends subreddit and messages sent to @SuckerPunch Productions on Twitter for any high-priority bugs or issues that emerge, Sucker Punch wrote. They continue, quote, we want to say a huge thank you to the entire community for the incredible amount of support and feedback we've gotten since launch. When Legends launched in October 2020, we never expected to have such an active community more than a year and a half later, and we could not be more thankful to everyone who has been with us on this journey, end quote. Firstly, congratulations, Sucker Punch. It's been a fantastic journey on Ghost of Tsushima, and Legends, of course, is legendary. Janet, how do you feel now that Ghost of Tsushima seems like it's had its last patch, and also, what are you looking forward to from Sucker Punch in the future?
I think I mean, I always want like new stuff, so I wouldn't mind them just doing something new. And I wasn't like the biggest fan of Ghost of Tsushima. Like I respect a lot of what it does with its like the wind, and I think it looked really beautiful. But like there was a few things that didn't hit for me in that game. I wouldn't mind seeing them iterate on it though. I mean, I think them having God, what was it called? It wasn't Legends. The other thing, Iki Island.
Iki Island. Yeah.
I think some of the things they did there sort of, to me, were a window into what that next game could be, in terms of like storytelling and some elements of the mechanics. Like I would love to see a follow-up game that sort of more quickly fills out like the stances. Like that was one of my beefs with the game. Like it took you a while to get all the stances, and I felt like the combat doesn't really start fully singing until you get all those stances where you can really like take on anything you have. Obviously, like the horse and like the combat added with that was really cool. And what I liked about the little bit of Iki Island that I did play was it leaned a lot heavier into like the mind fuck of it all, of like you're in this weird dream, like you're dealing with trauma, like, oh no, you've been drugged, but like what's real? And like you're kind of like more directly and more interestingly, in my opinion, unpacking some of the things you've dealt with in your life. Like I found that so much more compelling than like sit in the hot tub and think about my uncle. I'm like, all right. I mean, this is kind of like it's not exactly super moving to me personally, but I feel like the things that I was seeing in Iki Island speak towards an evolution of storytelling. And not that they didn't do anything like that in the first game, but I feel like they can really iterate on the stuff. Like I think the base is solid. People hear that I'm not like in love with Ghost of Tsushima, and I think they assume I just like don't like the game at all. Like I think the game is fine. I'm just not obsessed with it the way other people were. And for me, like I want them to iterate on their mechanics to get me to that next level of really feeling that this game is truly amazing, really fleshed out, really diverse in like its side missions. It's not just guess what, it's bandits all the time. Like I just want to see it get a little bit tightened up, but I think the base is incredibly solid. And obviously there's like a bunch of fanfare around it. They've supported it a lot. It's really become, I think, a staple with PlayStation. So as much as I'm down for something new, I'm also very down for like a continuation of this, because I think they have a really good base and that they can come out with something even better. Like even if you like it more than me, I think they can come up with something better than what they originally had.
Yeah, when I 1000% agree with that, right? Like I liked Ghost of Tsushima a lot, right? Like I liked it way more than you did, and I'd go as far as to say I fucking love Ghost of Tsushima. But it also reminds me of Horizon Zero Dawn in the way that like Forbidden West comes out, and there are so many things about Forbidden West that I think are a step up from Horizon Zero Dawn, and just like in a lot of little ways, right? Like the game obviously looks better, but then you have more diversity of activities, right? Like I think the world design is a step up, like the amount of different tribes you run into, and like the land diversity, and like there's so much work I feel like into the little parts of how do you make an open world stand out and feel more fresh and feel more varied and feel more dynamic and explorable. I think Horizon Forbidden West does a lot of that compared to Horizon Zero Dawn, right? I think the next Ghost of Tsushima, you want to see a lot of the same things. Give me more enemy variety, give me more weapons, give me more diversity of land and like different activities to get into, right? Like it doesn't just need to be hot tubs. It can be like other things. I know there were like way more than hot tubs in Ghost of Tsushima, but you get what I mean, right? Like expand that, like I'm very excited. I'm sure that's what they're planning, right? I'm sure that's what it will be, because that's the natural evolution of how you make a solid base in a first game in a franchise, which Ghost of Tsushima is, right? Ghost 2 is going to be off the chain. At least I hope so. And so that's what I hope for. I also hope for a Legends standalone game. Now that they've set the groundwork with Legends 1, right, and having it be a thing that you got basically as DLC for Ghost of Tsushima. I think with the success they saw there and the longevity they saw there, I think the smart move would be to break it out and make it a separate release. That way people can come in and just focus in on the multiplayer experience, and you can build it with more hype, build it with more expectation and anticipation, and make it a thing that is going to live forever, or at least live beyond what Legends 1 did. I think that is the next step, and I think that's what they're going to do, and I'm very excited for if and when they do that. Story number 4, Shin Megami Tensei has sold over 1 million units worldwide. This is Adam Bankhurst at IGN. Atlas has confirmed that Shin Megami Tensei 5 has sold over 1 million units worldwide, seemingly making it the best-selling entry in the franchise. The news was shared on Twitter alongside a special illustration of Nahobino from character designer Masayuki Doi to celebrate the milestone. Crossing 1 million copies appears to make Shin Megami Tensei 5 the best-selling game in the franchise, as Atlas previously confirmed that 3DS's Shin Megami Tensei 4 sold 600,000 units. Cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, shout out to that.
Shin Megami Tensei 5 do anything for you?
No, I can't say that it does. But I mean, I think these are always like important milestones to know, and I think they speak towards like the power that an IP has. And it's definitely one that I've been wanting to get around to. It's just one of those things where like, what was that last year, right? It just slipped. It slipped through the cracks, and like to be honest, like I set it up for failure in terms of my own backlog. But you know, it's definitely
It's
one
also
that
like
I
a very
want to
hardcore
enjoy.
game. Like,
Yeah.
I think the people who I saw get into Shin Megami Tensei 5 were people that were already like
It
Shin
wasn't
Megami
me.
Tensei fans, or like the hardcore JRPG nerds, right? Like, that was one that I tried and I wanted to get into, but very quickly I was like, okay, this is not a me game. Like, this is not going to hit for me. But for the people that it did hit, right? Like my roommate Mako Hayam loved Shin Megami Tensei 5. I know Imran Khan dug it as well, and I think these sales are due to like one, I think the Switch magic. You know, Switch has a thing where it just makes games sell, and then also I think the more and more you get iterations in Shin Megami Tensei, and like in turn also Persona, even though I know Persona is an entirely different thing, right? Like I think you're gonna see more people come to it and be willing to give it a shot, and so I'm curious to see where it goes next, right? I'm curious to see if Shin Megami Tensei 6 like hits double as well and hits this 2 million units by this time. But for that, we'll have to wait and see. For now, let's hop into story number 5. Future Xbox games might have ads. This is Zack Zweizen at Kotaku. Business Insider reports that Microsoft wants to work with ad tech companies to create a system that'll allow brands and advertisers to buy and place ads in free-to-play games. According to 2 people who spoke to Insider and who were reportedly involved with the program's ongoing planning and negotiations. According to these sources, the ads could appear as digitally rendered billboards in a racing game or open-world adventure. However, it's currently unknown what other forms these free-to-play ads could manifest as, or if they will include videos or audio. Business Insider was also unable to confirm if Microsoft and Xbox have started pitching advertisers and brands on the new ad system. Regardless, it's expected to launch around the third quarter of this year. A spokesperson for Microsoft told Kotaku that while it is, quote, always looking for ways to improve experience for players and developers, the company had nothing further to share about the reported ad system. Janet, thoughts?
At first, when I first saw this, because like this was in Slack from like over the weekend, I was like, oh, I hate this. And then I thought like 1 second more and I was like, oh, this is like back in the day when they used to have like ads in video games. Like it's funny because there's some things that like if you get remade or remastered or whatever, they're like, well, we can't put that like Coca-Cola billboard because we don't have like the rights to like advertise that anymore. So on one hand, there's something like capitalistically nostalgic about ads in games.
Capitalistically nostalgic is a great phrase.
But on the other hand, like I'm generally not really a fan. However, also the games are free to play and they need to make their money some way. What I'd hope to see from this is just the ability to like buy out of that, which we already see on mobile. You know, it's funny, a lot of people like smack talk mobile games or like what have you, and like it's the bane of gaming, but there's like so many things that like they have in common with like standard console gaming. And while like advertisements aren't really the most exciting thing for it to be borrowing from, it makes sense that they would do something like that. I just hope that we keep that in just free to play games. Like what I would hate to see is like doomsday scenario, like if it's on Game Pass, like, okay, you know, this now has ads in it or something. Like that's where I'm hoping it doesn't go. I just think there's so many ways we're constantly advertised and monitored in our society. It's just kind of like a little bit overwhelming, I think. And I think a lot of people, of course, go to games for escapism, what have you. So hopefully if they do implement this, again, I'm not necessarily against it in the sense that those studios need to make money on their games and Xbox needs to make money, and I get that. But, you know, having the way to like buy out that advertisement, which, you know, again, we already see on mobile a bunch, and I've totally paid for plenty of mobile games because I want to A, support the developer, and B, get rid of the ads. What about you?
I'm in a wait and see place. You know, I'm not totally. I'm like you, right? Where I thought about this and I was like, oh man, this is crazy. And I was like, oh, but like I played Burnout 3 and there are hell ads in Burnout 3 on the billboards, right? Like that's the thing that you've seen out of racing games, out of sports games, out of games in the past. I think the thing to note is that this is free to play games they're talking about, and so like if it is a way to pay for development and it is a way to get if it's a way to monetize games in a way that could theoretically like lessen the monetization on maybe buying items and buying cosmetics and other things, like if this is a way to balance it out and make it so that I'm not feeling nickel and dimed, hey, maybe that's a good thing, right? But also I think we won't know until it's actually implemented, but it's not something I'm going crazy about. Janet, what I am going crazy about is that this is from Mark Ghost in chat. Kendrick just tweeted, album is out May 13th. We're getting a new Kendrick album May 13th, Shannon. That's like less than a month away.
Yeah, but if I want to know what's coming out, no, I'm just kidding. It's too soon for that. Yeah, that's super exciting. I feel like it's been, well, you made this joke before, like during the Super Bowl, right? You said like Kendrick has like his album hair or something like that.
Yeah, no, like when you can tell when Kendrick is in album mode because he's letting his hair grow. He's like, he has an entirely different style. You know when he's in album mode, and he has been in album mode. I can't believe it, Janet. I'm very excited. Chat's going fucking crazy.
No, this is awesome. I've missed the last couple features he's done, but like I have like Family Ties in my like playlist rotation currently because like
that is the feature.
Yeah, like I mean, Kendrick's amazing. I've loved all of his albums to varying degrees. It took me a while to come around to Good Kid, Mad City. Funny enough, I know people like stand that album. Yeah, like I just didn't like it that much. I don't really have a reason at this point. Like it grew on me. I came around, but I just wasn't a huge fan initially. But like
I see it. What shocks me is that like
because it's like classic storytelling.
As soon as I heard, and we got to get back because we're running late in the show, and I know
you know what it was. Okay, it's because like his single, like he came in with the like Eiffel Tower Dick single, and I just was like, I'm not that, like I just didn't get pulled in until probably To Pimp a Butterfly, and then I went back, and now of course I love Good Kid, Mad City, and like all of his albums are varying degrees of great. I will say though, I'm really hoping for something on par with To Pimp a Butterfly. That's still my favorite of his discography.
Sure.
I'm hoping that we get something of that level, and also I want to see something that has like a more through line story. Like I think To Pimp a Butterfly was a great combination of like storytelling and just songs that stand on their own, while like Good Kid, Mad City is way more narrative driven than that album. Like I want To Pimp a Butterfly because I think it has a good in between, while like Damn was kind of more thematically tied, but not really as narrative as either of those two albums. I think To Pimp a Butterfly is the perfect blend.
You got to play the track list backwards, and you'll hear the story. Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you not?
We gotta do No, I didn't. I
wasn't expecting to get the Janet Kendrick Lamar breakdown. I thought we were gonna get hype for a second and move on. But I will say that like the first time I heard Backseat,
we should post show this.
We'll post show this. If you want the Kendrick conversation,
Kendrick Lamar in review,
tuned.
Post show.
We're going to do quick hits for the next few stories. Story number 6, Sonic Origins has been rated in South Korea. This is Chris Scullion at Video Games Chronicle. Sonic Origins has been given a rating in South Korea, indicating that it's still on track for a 2022 release. If you don't remember what Sonic Origins is, right, it was announced back in May 2021 during the Sonic Central presentation where we got the reveal of Sonic Colors Ultimate, Sonic Frontiers, where they didn't give it a name yet. Sonic Origins is like, it's to include Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, Sonic 3, and Knuckles. And they talked about like having new features and stuff for the game. And so I'm very excited about that. You should be very excited about that. There's also like a new image that got that was unearthed because it went on the PlayStation Store. Kevin has brought it up here, and I love the image because it invokes Sonic Mania, which has me even more excited for Sonic Origins because it seems like they're listening and like this might have more effort put into it than we might have been expecting. But I'm not going to hold out too much hope. I'm going to get it when I get it and play it and have fun. Nice. So that's news for me and Tim Geddes. Story number 7, Babylon's Fall dropped to less than 10 concurrent PC players this week. This is Andy Robinson at Video Games Chronicle. Babylon's Fall, the new hack and slash multiplayer game from Square Enix and Platinum Games, appeared to hit a new low this week, with its concurrent PC player count briefly dropping below 8, or briefly dropping to just 8 users. As noted by Tech Radar, the online game has struggled to attract more than 100 concurrent players throughout this week, and on April 13th, it briefly dropped below 10 users, according to tracking site SteamDB. They posted insisting that, when I say they, I mean Square Enix and Platinum Games. They posted it insisting that there are, quote, no plans to reduce scale of development on Babylon's Fall, and claim that content up until the game's second season is practically complete, with work on season 3 already started. And this is where I stop and say, Platinum, Square, you feel free to cut the cord on this one, all right? Stop season 3 development, move on. Like, we're at 8 players. It's time to cut and go, because you do not need a sequel patch in this thing.
How is this, like, how accurate is that? That sounds really low. Like, I'm just wondering if that's either way. Babylon's Fall isn't doing well. If it's 10, if it's 100, whatever. Like, this is just hey, this just did, and Babylon's Fall still not doing well. You're right. They probably should, move on at this point. I think now it's just a question of when. I'm sure they are aware of things internally, but I don't know. I also I think I do respect them at least making an active effort. And again, like what I always say with like games like this that are like widely critically unacclaimed, that are kind of like consensus is that this game is not good. everyone tries to make a good game. I'm sure they thought this was a good game when they made it and they put out there they wouldn't if they didn't. And I think this is just them trying to
I feel like they would have.
I don't think
Square Enix
so.
we're talking about. They put out the Quiet Man.
Yeah,
and Marvel's Avengers.
I think the people making, at least I feel like some of the people making A Quiet Man thought that was good. You're telling me people are just making shit that like sucks, and then like think of the worst thing you've made. Think of the worst thing you've made and that you've put out in the world. Like, did you know it was bad when you made it? You know, like that's the thing.
I'm sure I did. I used to make raps when I was in high school. I knew that shit was mad trash.
You still make raps, like you didn't.
Yeah,
you,
but like now I'm great at it. But like I'm not.
You think stares into camera intensely. See, Blessing thinks he has bars because like who doesn't believe in themselves? You know. Again,
Janet,
I think you can
next
put out products
KFGD,
that
bring
aren't
your
done.
bars. I'll bring mine, and we can figure this out. We
I
can
don't
let the
have
audience
bars.
decide. Exactly.
I
You
never
don't
said
have
I had
bars, so you shouldn't be
bars.
talking. Exactly.
But you don't have bars either. That's the argument.
I got bar. I shared with you my one Uncharted bar where I was gonna make the diss the diss TikTok toward Nathan
Your
Drake.
singular bar. You have bars.
I added another bar to that, just so you know.
Now it is bars. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't
But-
front. My music is not very good. So
I'm sure that when they started The Quiet Man, the first like third of the process, they're like, we got something here. But I'm sure at a certain point, like they had to be like, this sucks, but we're too far gone. We have to finish this.
also
That's
for the
how I
post
think it
show,
happened.
on top of like some like Kendrick talk, we need to talk music stuff because I'm trying to work on putting out music for the first time ever and stuff. And it's bad.
Oh.
It's like, but I like that. We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later.
Let's round out the Roper Report story number 8. Netflix announces a first of its kind deal with Exploding Kittens, and it's a game and an animated series. This is honestly a news story that is legit just for me. I did not have to include this. I really want to talk about Exploding Kittens because I love Exploding Kittens. This is Adam Bankhurst at IGN. Thanks to a first of its kind Netflix deal, an exclusive version of the card game Exploding Kittens is launching on the streamer ahead of its animated series. This will be the first time Netflix will release a mobile game and a TV series from the same franchise, and Exploding Kittens, the game, will be released on Netflix in May 2022, and the adult animated comedy series will premiere in 2023. The game will feel very similar to those who have played the card game, as it tasks players with avoiding the titular Exploding Kitten. The game will feature 2 new exclusive cards, Radar and Flip-Flop. Radar will reveal the position of the next Exploding Kitten in the deck, and Flip-Flop will reverse the order of the cards drawn. Feature cards and game mechanics will be added once the series arrives, so, quote, friends and families can play with their favorite characters and bring the show to life. Furthermore, the game will feature single and multiplayer modes and will be available to all Netflix members without additional fees or in-app purchases. Janet, I am ecstatic about this. I fucking love Exploding Kittens. Like, I used to play the card game all the time with my siblings and my friends. This might be Netflix's killer app for me specifically, not for anybody else, but for me. I'm gonna play the hell out of this, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm also excited about the show. I didn't realize they were doing a show too, and so good stuff. But Janet, the release of this is so far away. May 2022, so far away. A new Kendrick Lamar album, Exploding Kittens game. I'm eating, Janet. I'm eating. If I want to know what I could eat today, though, where'd I go?
The official list of upcoming software across each and every platform, as listed by the Kinda Funny Games Daily show hosts each and every weekday.
Yeah. Out today. We got nothing. There's nothing out today. We do have some new dates for you. They Are Coming arrives to Steam on May 20th, and then One More Island comes to Steam on May 19th.
Who's they in the They Are Coming?
Who do you think they are?
Aliens?
I'm going to say zombies. Bear, what do
One
you
of
think?
us or both is wrong.
Bear doesn't have his mic on. Now it's time for kindafunny.com/you're-wrong, where you write in and let us know what we got wrong as we got it wrong, so we can correct it for those watching later on youtube.com/kindafunnygames and on podcast services around the globe. Let's see. IRS Potato writes in and says, friendly reminder to everyone that today is the last day to do your taxes. Please make sure Blessing does his taxes because he's a slacker. Listen, I did my taxes. I said I was going to do them weeks ago. I did them weeks ago. All right, I'm taking care of it. But if you haven't done taxes, go do your taxes. That is it for kindafunny.com/you're-wrong. We didn't get anything wrong. So let me tell you about this week's hosts, which are Tuesday, tomorrow, you're getting Greg and Gary Whitta. Wednesday, you're getting me and Shannon Lau of Washington Post. Thursday, you're getting Greg and Tim. Then on Friday, you're getting Greg and Tim.
Fish people. It's fish people are coming. Fish people.
Fish people. Thank you. There he is. There he finally got his mic working.
Wait,
I should have
is that a guess or is that the truth?
That's his guess.
Okay.
You don't know.
Unless it's the truth. Unless he looked
I
it up.
hope that's true.
I could have made a joke and said that like Barrett was coming since he joined the call as soon as we started on the conversation. But you know, there's a lot going on in here, right? A new character count, more album is coming. Exploding Kittens is coming to Netflix. I'm living my best life right now. If you're watching this live on Twitch, after this is Greg and Mike with another edition of KFW. So get hyped for that. Of course, you can catch the new episode of KFW tomorrow when it goes live for everyone. Remember, this has been Kinda Funny Games Daily, each and every weekday live right here on twitch.tv/KindaFunnyGames. We run you through the nerdy news you need to know about. We have a Patreon post show for those that are subbed at the silver level of patreon.com/KindaFunnyGames. So stick around for that. Otherwise, until next time, Game Daily.